A little Windows Phone for your Wednesday here on Steve Alicious Tech. Today we have the Samsung Ativ S Neo. This was a suggestion of someone on a previous Windows Phone video who said, hey, why don't you cover some of the Samsung Windows Phone devices? I knew they had them, but I thought they were further back. I thought they were Windows 7, 7.5, and that really wasn't interesting me. So I shot back and said, hey, did any of them ever make it to Windows 8? And the commenter right away said, yeah, the Ativ did. Check it out. And the more that I looked into it, the more interested I became. Now, this is the S Neo, which actually came out in June of 2013, and it was the budget version of the Ativ S, which is the regular. I hope I'm saying that right. I've seen some other videos on it, and I do believe I'm saying it right. It's a ridiculous name for the phone, but the Ativ S was particularly interesting, not only because of the time period it came out, but a Windows 8 machine, a build quality of a Galaxy S6, aluminum frame, aluminum build, the body, back when they made the phones, the metal body. It had an OLED display and a couple other changes that made it, one that I couldn't get my hands on eBay. There weren't any examples that I particularly would want. So I went ahead and got the S Neo, which does a couple different things. The other one, by the way, was powered by the S4 Plus. Now, if you put that package together and think back in the day, those other devices that were powered by the S4 Plus, which I believe included the BlackBerry Classic, there were a number of high watermark Windows devices that were powered by that. Totally snappy. It would have probably been a fantastic performer, and I'm sure it is because the budget version is that we have here today. So what did they cut? Well, the build quality suffered a little bit. They went from the aluminum build of the Ativ S to the plastic build that they have here, but just fine. Still perfectly solid. A lot of phones back then came that way. It didn't really seem like that much of a downstep. 720p LCD display on this one, saving a little money from the OLED on its more expensive partner. A gig of RAM, 16 gigs of storage with expandable storage with a micro SD card slot, and a 2,000 milliamp hour battery, which if you remember Windows Phone at all, that battery life would outlast you. You wouldn't have to worry about plugging in at the end of the day or any sort of battery or anything like that. You would be making the day and then some with that battery, I could assure you, because of a couple different things that we'll talk about in a moment. So the Ativ S Neo, still, even with the budget processor they have in here, it was one of those no-name processors, still perfectly fine. Because if you remember, Windows Phone needed nothing. You could run Windows Phone on a potato and it would run well and be just fine. I'm pretty sure an 8800 processor would run Windows Phone, which was the great thing about it. And if you see, right out of the box, I didn't have to change any settings or anything. We had dark mode out of the box. We had the OLED ones that were the other ones, the more expensive ones. You know the power savings that gave you back in the day, 2012, 2013 with dark mode. You can see the dark mode here and the power savings that you get with the live tiles and all the rest of it, and I'll bring back all those memories. Unfortunately, I said, did any of them make it to Windows 8, thinking somehow there'd be more functionality there? Of course not. Not really. Even the Windows 10 ones are getting a little tough, but Windows 8 to me is just that's when I really think that Windows Phone came into its own. Those of us who used it really enjoyed this version a lot. In fact, a lot of people, when they went to even 8.1, and certainly when it went to Windows Mobile 10, really had problems with the changes that they made with the user experience. And I can see a lot of that. I like what they had with Windows 8. I think that it was solid. I think that it was well optimized, which is the important thing that we forget. This thing ran well, and I understand all the phones back then. We're talking about a time period in the past, but all phones had limited RAM. But this was a gig of RAM, relatively budget processor. Not exactly the most powerful thing in the world, and it could run just fine. And you could go through it and still use it and not have any issues and get a perfectly fine user experience out of it. It had the keyboard that we all know and love. We could pull that up here, just pull up a new message, and you could see it. It did have it, despite being the Samsung. And I do like the Samsung effort. I think the Ativ was a nice device. Probably was nice to use back in the day to get some of that Samsung design language that they had on these devices and port it over to Windows Phone to kind of take a break from the Nokia stuff that we had. I love my Nokia stuff. I absolutely did. But to have something in this form factor back then probably would have been pretty cool to use. And you can see one of the few things that still works. If you turn it on and you have Wi-Fi, you're going to get those Bing wallpapers, which is cool. So you had live wallpaper, live tiles, dark mode, fantastic keyboard, snappy, well-optimized experience all the way back in 2012 and 2013 is certainly something to enjoy. That the one thing is nice is they had the micro USB charging, but because of that 2,000 milliamp hour battery, you weren't looking in the middle of the day for a quick charge or anything like that, because a quick charge wasn't a thing back then. You were sitting there and you were waiting. But if you had one of these, your battery lasted the entire day. But it was cool to see Windows Phone on something that you're used to seeing Android. You look at one of these designs, you look at this design language, you look at this kind of mid 2010 design language, and you're going to hit the power button. You're almost going to certainly see an Android build on there, Android 4.4.3, whatever happened to be Android 6. That's what you expect to come out of it when you turn on the screen, but you were getting this. Unfortunately now on Windows 8, Windows 10 is no bargain either at this point, but on Windows 8 you're not going to get a whole heck of a lot anymore. With ESPN, there's mobile sites that you could pull up that will use Internet Explorer. You're going to have to jump through a bunch of warnings complaining about it, not wanting it to work anymore, and then you could see what you get. You're basically getting text, and any mobile websites, older websites, will work if you want to use them on here. You're going to have a heck of a time logging into anything. You're not going to be able to log into any Microsoft stuff. If there are people who sideload apps, you could absolutely do that. If you have the micro SD card slot, you could sideload your favorite apps. If they just need Wi-Fi, if you're in a country that you could still have these on your network and you don't get kicked off, and you can still get the 3G and the 4G data on here, then you'll be okay, and you could do that. And you could probably get the data, sideload stuff, as long as you're, if you're AT&T, unfortunately with this, they're going to kick you off immediately. Even though this was an AT&T branded device, as you can see all the AT&T Windows Phone stuff that came back in the day. There were some cool things on here. They put this manga camera thing, which was a Samsung, I guess you'd call it bloatware type stuff, but it added these little, I guess, animation things to your photos, so you could put yourself in a manga if you wish. Different things here, whatever. Those mid 2000s, 2010 things that they put on phones, especially these AT&T phones, you could see that on here. But now the on app or the on device things will work just fine. So I was able to get OneNote will work. You're just not going to be able to sync it up with anything. Office will work. You're just not going to be able to transmit anything to anything unless you're using the device that will allow it. But you see, you can open up a note, you could have it, you could store it on device and be just fine and get all the functionality of OneNote, which is still quite cool, and all the Office stuff that is still quite cool. And you could take advantage of some of that camera stuff, like I said. It's not going to take the best pictures in the world, but it'll still work. It's a little mini diary here that you can have as well. You could put that through, use location, and you could put in little different entries and complete diary and put pictures in there, which is actually a cool little neat little thing that you could still, and that will still work fine on this device. So there's some stuff you could do offline with it. You could put Wi-Fi on it if you're in a country that's not particularly allowing these older devices, so you could get some functionality. They're plenty cheap. If you're a collector like I am, if you're just a Windows Phone fan like I know a lot of you are out there, you could pick up one of these if you had one. I really want to know what it was like to use it back in the day. So let me know in the comment section if you had one of these and what the experience was like. If you had the Ativ S, the one that was like an S6 with that aluminum build, that would have been awesome to have as well. But I just thought it was cool to go back and take a look at something like this. It was a great suggestion. I wouldn't have even known this phone existed if it weren't for that comment saying, hey, take a look at some of those Windows devices, and I didn't realize that one had made it all the way to Windows 8. So anytime you could see Windows Mobile on a non-Nokia device, it is interesting to see how they integrated it, what they did, and what the form factor was like. So if you have any more suggestions on phones that were kind of like that were not, I think HP, I think Dell, I don't know if Dell had a phone, probably, but I know HP had some of them. If there were any of the HP ones that you liked that made it to Windows 8, let me know in the comment section below. If you've made it this far, like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Until next time, for more trips down memory lane. We're always going to have Windows Phone on this channel. We're always going to have BlackBerry on this channel. Until next time.